Some guy wrote a video game where it's like a first-person shooter that you shoot Jeff Koons' art.
Really?
And he built a box around it so it looked like an old video game.
Oh, okay.
A stand-up arcade game. And you could go, and he put it in an art show so you could go in and you could like shoot. It was like Doom. And
Yeah.
you could shoot Jeff Koons' work.
Wow.
So what happens when
That's
Jeff
amazing.
Koons plays that game? Is he like,
I don't know. It's like Koonsception.
yeah.
Waiting to dry.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of Waiting to Dry. We've been actually talking here, chatting amongst each other for the past like 20 minutes or so while we got this ready. But we
And
got.
you'll never know what we were talking about.
Let's just all recreate the exact entire conversation over again.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. But we got Jason Avery in the house.
Yeah.
Hello.
Our first white guest. But
Or as we like to call them, pale facers.
yeah.
It's my new racial term, my new racial slur. I'm trying to start.
This is a cracker episode.
Yeah. For the Hawaiians, we got our first haole. But
Yeah. I back to the pale facer. It started because I forget how it started, but I thought that they should replace the Redskins mascot with a pale facer,
oh yeah,
and that's the new name. And then they should have Will Ferrell on the side of their helmet, like just his face.
welfare.
And I was like, everyone wins in that case, you know.
Welfare makes even more money.
But I don't know if that'll ever happen. But yeah, welcome, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, fellow Santa Rosan.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
How'd you do in the fires? Actually, I'm sure people are curious about that. I still get asked about that all the time.
I live over right between where it was kind of
Right,
right in between the two fires.
near the
And,
hills. Yeah.
I kind of just waited it out for a minute, and when it looked like, when the line at the gas station started to get really long, I just it's kind of funny because I grabbed a bunch of stuff and I went to Oakland.
Oh yeah, that's
and,
right.
And I stayed at someone's house for like a week,
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
and it was interesting because of like what you take,
Mm-hmm.
because
I took almost nothing with me. Yeah.
You know what I took? I took all the art that people gave me or I bought,
Yeah.
but I left all my stuff there.
Yeah.
You know,
See,
like
now I feel shitty because I only grabbed my sketchbooks.
you grab your own stuff.
Because my sketchbooks to me are like my diary. I guess that sounds lame, but they're like the one piece of art that I create that I keep for myself
Yeah,
and I make for myself.
Right.
So I always that's like the one thing I cherish. And sadly, I left everyone's art. Sorry, guys.
yeah.
I didn't even take any of that. I took basically
And pictures.
my camera because I was like, if that goes, that's going to be the hardest material thing to replace other than my art.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of my art is here in my studio anyway, which is pretty far from the fires, fortunately. So
Yeah.
I didn't have that much to worry about. But I have stuff that I've collected over the years is at home, so that would have sucked. But I wasn't really
Like
thinking about.
Pogs.
Yeah, exactly. My Pokemon cards are still there
Your
too.
Pokemon.
Gotta catch them all. So I guess let's start by kind of discussing your artwork.
Oh, right.
We're still working on our transitions.
Yeah,
but-
trying to kind of give everyone that's listening an idea of maybe what you paint and your process and all that stuff. So we'll kind of dive deep into that first.
the huge.
All right.
But yeah, I know that you come originally from. Did you grow up in Wisconsin?
I'm from the Midwest,
Yeah.
like
Young and Restless.
Iowa, Illinois,
Oh, okay.
Wisconsin,
Yeah.
that area.
Mhm.
That's where I grew up,
Yeah.
and yeah, I grew up in the forest.
Does that influence you in any way? You think of it, like still?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do think that it's there's like a connection to nature.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if I grew up in New York or LA or something like that, I think that there'd be a different kind of core, somehow, of it. Just having that experience. The experiences that I had always revolved around being outside or being very close to that, and all the people around me. You just grow up, small towns, things like that, like farmers, fishing, hunting, like it just, things like that. I think that affects you, just as a human being,
for sure.
Just it changes that. The parties that I went to when I was a kid didn't happen at warehouses and things that happened out in the woods.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
In barns.
In barns. And it was like a DJ with turntables in a barn.
Yeah, exactly.
It was freezing cold, but everybody was dancing, and it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They still have parties like that in Calistoga, actually.
I'm sure Sebastopol is happening right now.
Yeah. Sebastopol. If anybody doesn't know, that's like the hippie area of Sonoma County.
Yeah, a lot of dreadlocks.
Yeah. Lots of armpit hair on everybody.
So when did you make your trek this way?
I've been here since '98.
Oh, really?
I came out here and I came right to the Bay Area.
Nice. What about it drew you to here?
Well, actually, right before I left for like 4 years, I worked as an assistant to two glass blowers, to sculptors, working in a glass blowing hot shop with them.
Huh.
And we did ACC craft shows, which is kind of the higher, kind of like a higher end like craft show. And we did one at the Wharf in San Francisco.
Oh, did you?
So we drove all the way here with a van full of glass.
Oh, shit.
And went to the show. And we had a couple days, like 2 days extra. And the guy that I was an assistant to, he had a friend that lived in Vallejo. So we crashed at his place, but then we went to Bodega Bay. And I remember I'd worked for these guys for a while, and I was the only assistant. And when you're a glassblowing assistant, it's a very it requires more than one person, and the assistant sort of teacher relationship there's like a symbiosis there. It's really necessary for you to have like once you have a really good assistant, or you're an assistant and you have a really good sort of glassblower, that you're like, that is something you
build a
you play off of each other's movements, and you anticipate that. It's like it's hard to replace, Right. But I stood on the beach the first time I'd seen the ocean in my life.
Oh, I'm sure.
In Bodega Bay, and I looked at him and I said, "I'm giving you my 1 year notice. I'm moving here.
Oh, wow.
This is where
awesome.
This is where I need to be."
That's awesome.
And I dropped out of school. I quit my job. I lived in the woods in a tent for 3 months.
Really?
And I packed all my stuff into my pickup truck, and I drove from there to here.
That's awesome.
Wow, that's crazy.
I think it took me 2 months to get here. I got lost in Santa Fe for a little while.
Like willfully lost?
Yeah, I knew this other glassblower, and he actually lived in what was once a monastery where these monks grew tomatoes. And he had this incredible house that it had no windows. It was all bars, like it was an old monastery, and he lived there. And I just kind of camped in his backyard. I think I was trying to move to Albuquerque for a minute, but it didn't really want me.
Yeah.
It was weird. Albuquerque's weird, man.
So I heard. I've never watched Breaking Bad, but...
Oh, is that where that is supposed to take place?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Isn't it? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Albuquerque's it's cool.
I got heard Santa Fe is cool. I don't know enough about it to say for sure, but...
Santa Fe is interesting, too. It's Santa Fe has like a very clear division of class.
I feel like that's kind of how it is here in a way.
You got, there's like a street, and I think, if I remember, this is a million years ago, there's like a culvert a big like runoff thing, and if you're on one side of it, it is all, you know, that, and if you're on the other side of it, it's like the other side of the tracks, like pretty hard, you know. It's like
I lived in East Palo Alto for a good chunk of my life, and that's pretty much how it is. Like East Palo Alto and Palo Alto, there's a stream.
All right.
It goes across, and from there, once you cross the stream, it goes from like the richest people in probably the world or country or whatever, to just poor poverty and all that. I mean, it's getting better,
right?
But it's pretty much the same thing. It's a weird thing how that works. But that's what it is. I still love East Palo Alto. It's just way funner than Palo Alto.
I've never been there. I've never been to Palo Alto. I don't think.
Palo Alto, you can skip. Just go to the hood. It's way funner there.
Find the good hole-in-the-wall restaurants.
Yeah, well, I mean, the restaurants aren't great, but you can get drunk wherever you want. Yeah, that's awesome. So then you made your way to California.
Yeah.
And did you go straight to kind of Northern California, or?
Yeah, I mean, I had connection here in Healdsburg. I ended up Santa Rosa, Healdsburg, and I've been here ever since.
Nice. Wow.
You know.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.
You lived here in Santa Rosa the entire time?
I was living in Healdsburg.
Okay.
I was out near Sacramento for a little while, and then I came back, and since I've been back, I've just been here.
Oh, all right.
I love it here.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially when you go to Sacramento, then you're like,
yeah,
get back.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I love Sonoma County. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I've only been here for 4 years, but it's growing on me.
It's nice. Yeah, my friend Joella, who lives in Atlanta right now, but she used to live in L.A. and she never really took to L.A. like most people do. You're either a lifer in L.A. or you hate it.
I went to L.A. and man, I was there for like 4 days.
Yeah, and
not for you.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't have my hair's not that good. You know.
Yeah.
I'm just not attractive enough to be in LA.
Yeah.
Few are. But she came out here to visit me a couple of years ago, and she was like, this is the first place in California that I've been to that like I could actually see like, oh, okay, like if I were to start a family, like this is the type of place you come to if you're looking to settle down, like this is the kind of California you want to be in.
Right.
And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. There's other little spots.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah.
Like Monterey areas.
Oh yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah. That's beautiful, but it's way more expensive than here, I think.
Rob a bank or whatever. I don't got all the answers. I'm just trying to tell you.
I thought you did.
But it gets cold up here.
Not as cold as where I'm from.
Oh yeah. You laugh at
20 below, cold, man.
Yeah.
Ouch. Yeah, I am not meant for snow at all. My wife MJ, so I never saw snow till I was 28 or something. She brought me to see snow in Tahoe a couple years back,
sure.
And me being Islander, I did not mix well with it. I touched it, and I was like, "Oh, get it off of me!"
Oh wait, are you Tongan?
Yeah, I'm half Tongan. So my dad's white and my mom is Tongan, but I grew up with my Tongan family, so I just kind of grew up in that culture.
Do you know what those things are called? Where it's like meat chopped up and then it's wrapped in the leaf and it's like a ball that's steamed.
Yeah, that's called lu.
What's it called?
Lu.
That stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
There's like 12 Tongan people that live below me, my studio.
Oh.
And they bring me food all the time.
Most of the time, it's lupulu, which is taro leaf and corned beef.
Yeah.
But there's different types, so you can get like lamb, which is lusipi, and
what's the other stuff that's in there?
It's like onion and coconut milk and probably some mayonnaise, depending on which Tongan you ask. But Tongans love mayonnaise.
I thought it was some kind of potato and
Oh, maybe they might.
I don't know, but yeah, no,
I've never had it
mayonnaise
with
and
potato. But they usually do like pretty big cuts of onion, mayonnaise, coconut milk. God, I've never had it with potato, but I mean, me and my sister were just talking about that dish, and we're like, I bet we could like do some like culinary stuff with it, because I'm a pretty good cook, and my sister, she went to culinary school to be a pastry chef, but we're just like we like cooking. So like, what if we, added, because Tongans don't add spice to anything except for this like raw fish dish they make, but they really don't add spices to anything. So we were like, what if we like put a little bit of habanero pepper in there or something?
yeah.
We should play around with these flavors and see what we come up with.
The taro root is amazing though.
Yeah.
It makes everything smell good. When
Yeah,
they cook, you can smell it in my house. It smells wonderful.
And the leaves are the taro leaves.
yeah.
So they just utilize every part of that plant.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because I learned a while ago that the Pacific Islanders, they brought chicken to California,
Really?
and then they would trade them with the Native Americans for like sweet potatoes, and I don't
Okay.
know if taro was a part of that, but that's like such a huge staple is the starches in our foods.
Yeah.
It's like that's such a cool trade-off that we made with them. Like we brought chicken, which is all Latin dishes with chicken in it are delicious, so you're welcome.
Right.
and then we got like sweet potatoes and those things. So it's like, we did a pretty solid trade where both have huge staples of what we got in that trade.
Yeah.
So back to your art. Went on a random tangent there. So
Fun.
so were you pursuing art before you moved to California, or is that something you picked up along the way, or while here, or how did that work out?
This is like the origin story, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is where it begins.
Exactly.
This
We
is
gotta
it.
get to know our guests here.
Yeah, we're kind of our whole idea is that we're probably gonna have like repeat guests, like friends that in the art world, and we figure we'd let people know who they are first, and then the next time we'll just shoot the shit and tell dick jokes or whatever. I don't know.
Sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, just like the idea of
Yeah.
continuing where people's work are developing,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
People can get updates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, yeah, part of the, I'm going to tangent a little bit for a sec too, but part of the reason we started this podcast because both Josh and I listen to a bunch of podcasts. We're both like big fans of them. But a lot of the podcasts we listen to aren't art podcasts because a lot of them are very sort of, they're either too regimented or they're the same sort of thing over and over again. It's like, it's interesting to hear about a person, like an artist you don't know about, but the questions tend to be all the same sort of thing.
Right.
So, but there's, I mean, artists, you hang out with them too, so you know how interesting they can be even when they're not talking about art.
Yeah.
And so, even though we both talk about art all the time and we can talk about it all day, we can talk about other things too.
Yeah.
So, might as well try and get some of that recorded somewhere, because there's a lot of times you go home after like a party or something, you're like, oh man, that was such an interesting conversation. You kind of want to relive it in a way.
Yeah.
So this kind of gives us an opportunity to do that a little bit. And also, like, artists tend to be solitary for the most part. Well, I also mean that, yeah.
And they seem to be like misrepresented by people that don't do art. So a
Yeah.
lot of times they're like, artists and art snobs and blah. And you're like,
Yeah.
you're not even in this world. You don't even know who the fuck we are. Like,
Yeah.
so
There's all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
yeah. It's like the artist has a fucking turtleneck. It's like none of my friends have ever worn a turtleneck after the age of 4.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just don't have any clue. So we figure these initial episodes will have, friends that we have, and we'll kind of get into who they are, is how they became the artist they are, their origin stories or whatever.
Right.
And then after that, we kind of get to like loosen up and be like,
Yeah.
what's the deal with you, man?
Talk
Yeah.
like how we did in the 20 minutes before we started recording.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
But
let's
anyways,
see.
yeah.
The origin story.
Uh-huh.
I've actually.
Like, did you grow up doing art?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
From the day.
That's,
I mean, I was actually. was kind of cool to be able to tell the story tonight because I kind of had like this just experience the other day, like last weekend. But
wait, what was the experience? I gotta.
no, it was just it kind of ties into the origin story, but like I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember this, but there used to be an encyclopedia, the Time Life Encyclopedia of Art. And it was a whole bunch of books. They were about 3/4 of an inch thick, big coffee table kind of books. That I don't know. A lot of people had them. You can find them in used bookshops, but there's like 30 volumes of the history of art. And my
encyclopedia. I mean,
it was just
I
like
have encyclopedias, but not that one.
It was like kind of maybe the thing that you could buy like an ad for it came in the mail and you could sign it up and they'd send it to you. But
Sure.
My folks, my father was he was a draftsman. He worked back when they still had rooms full of dudes drawing pictures of like engines.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
He did that for a while. He did a bunch of other stuff too, but that was something he did.
That's cool.
And he always had that manifested in his life in some way. Like he was a hobbyist, kind of, he was always making something, doing something, and my mother was actually a weaver. And
baskets or
no, like huge weavings, like back in the 60s when it was all natural dye, and she spun her own stuff from wool. She had a massive, like a big loom.
Okay.
Like making these giant weavings. But in the 60s where they did those real like Lord of the Rings kind of like very organic kind of fiber art. She was like a fiber artist. That's almost what you would call it,
Okay.
But it was all handmade. It was all hand dyed. It was kind of just, and she's a killer ceramicist.
Okay.
And she taught art at like a high school, at like a school level. Never while I was living with them. It was kind of like before and then after I kind of left home. She did that. But I remember being like 8 years old, and I would sit in the living. It was like before I could almost really read very well, but I would be flipping through this Time Life book, looking at Titian and like the pre-Raphaelites and Picasso, and I became obsessed with like Leonardo's sketchbook. Because he draw the those war machines that he used to draw. Yeah. And I would just look at these pictures and think, how do people do this? This is crazy. Like, I want to do that. I want to know how you could do that.
Yeah. Right.
And I had we lived near Chicago, kind of. So I had like an uncle who lived in Chicago, and he brought me.
Did you go to the Art Institute Museum there?
I've been to the Art Institute Museum several times.
Yeah, it's an amazing place.
Yeah, I've actually broken into the school too.
Oh, really?
When it was closed, and ran around in the sculpture department when I was a little kid. But he brought a book that was Michelangelo's drawings, and I remember trying to copy the Libyan Sibyl, the drawing.
Yeah, sure.
When I was maybe 9. And getting so pissed off. I was stomped through the kitchen. And later in the day, I think my mom brought me tracing paper. I'd never seen tracing paper because I was like pissed. I was like grumpy all day. And she showed me how I could put it over the picture and I could trace. And then I was happy that I could do that.
Yeah.
And
like, oh, it's not that hard.
Yeah. And then that just like it just continued from there. There was a time when I think I don't know, I think my mom had to work. My dad and mom were both at work, and it was summer, so they were trying to find something to do with me. And there was a lady. This is when I was in 3rd grade. There was a lady who did like Bob Ross paintings on like saw blades.
Okay.
Like she painted like Bob Ross.
I've seen saw blades painted on with like like landscapes.
Yeah. Just like that. Exactly like that.
Like old lumberjack.
Yeah, exactly.
With huge teeth.
So she somehow she lived in my neighborhood, so my mom arranged something where I would go over to her house. I'd pack a lunch and I'd go over to her house.
That's
and
awesome.
I would watch Bob Ross videos.
Nice.
And she would and then we'd paint. She showed me how to use oil paint.
How old are you at this time?
11.
Okay.
And I would make this, learn how to paint like Bob Ross. And it was super fun. And I did that for a little while. And somewhere there's still a painting. My first oil painting is somewhere around, like, I think my mom has it in the attic or something like that.
It's collector's item.
Yeah. And then, there was actually the high school that I went to I never took actual art classes until high school. My school system didn't have, we moved around and there wasn't any, but the high school I did go to was very small, but the art department and the theater department were incredible.
That's awesome.
And the woman who ran the art department was, we had ceramics. We had a kiln in our school, and the woman that ran it had been, she was like one of the teachers that had been there longer than anyone else, and she had an enormous amount of freedom to be able to do, whatever she wanted, really. So she was able to kind of really we were able to watch like Kurosawa movies in class while we were making work, and we got to watch Dreams. I think Kurosawa's Dreams.
Oh, is it a dream? Oh, okay. I've only seen one of his movies, so.
Yeah, it was, and it was just
Ron and Seven Samurai.
And we did. Oh yeah, Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
We were able to work with the theater department to make sets and all different kinds of stuff that was really great. And so like I was able to do that, and then it just kind of like I started working with those guys blowing glass, and I was always painting. Like I had always my bedroom was always a studio. Nice. All through high school, all through middle school, I always painted. Like, and I used to enter like, I don't know, I'd win some amateur local.
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Here, when you're a kid, like
they do them at the mall or whatever.
Yeah, it was like, or some, the Legion Hall or something like that.
That's cool.
And then I went to school for a little while.
School as in college?
Yeah, I went to university in Wisconsin.
Okay.
It was a very underfunded, small kind of like, it would be the equivalent of like a UC school, but it was small. And
did you go there for like regular standard college stuff, or were you trying to pursue art still?
I was actually. I was kind of into my third year as a painting major.
Nice.
And I also did like sculpture and then all the other stuff. Yeah. But it was at that time, the professors there.
And what year was this around?
I don't even want to say, man.
All right, fine.
2011.
It was it was before the millennium. Everybody that happened to be in that program as a professor came out of the 60s.
Oh, okay.
So no one had atelier training on any kind of level, and it was kind of like there was basically two things where they would say, do whatever you want, and or they were like, you paint like I do. And I was fine with it. It just, I felt like what I really wanted was an atelier experience. I wanted someone to sit me down and like,
oh, did you?
Whip me while I was doing plaster casts or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, but there was none of that. I think I had, I was in like independent painting at that point, and we had painted live from a model one day. Wow. One day in like 3 years, man. What was cool about it for me was that there was open figure drawing like constantly, and I would go to open figure drawing. That's and just like best, yeah. And there'd be 4 people in there. Like on a Friday night at a college, just like 2 people in there in the model. So you just get to you have an enormous amount of like freedom and to dictate light and everything, and that was great. Can
you do a handstand?
Yeah.
That's
Can you
funny.
hold that for 10 minutes? Thank you.
Friday nights at my school at the Academy of Art, it was always packed because it was a quick studies drawing class. So it was a good class for people in like 3 different majors. So they were all 1, 2, and 3 minute drawings for 3 hours. And by the end of it, like your brain's ass was kicked by the end of it. And so, but it was awesome because he got all this drawing time into it. But it was always packed. Like it was hard to find a place to sit usually or stand even.
Yeah. See, I mean, that was kind of more the experience that I was
That you wanted.
hoping for.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Yeah.
And I mean, there was one semester where I had a painting semester and with this painting professor, and I got so disillusioned with class that I just stayed home. But I got into making these monoprints. So I had this big piece of glass, and I was priming all this paper and making oil monoprints. Like,
Yeah.
I would do a whole like background painting kind of, and then just draw and remove, and then do a print. And I just never went to class because I was actually working full time the whole time I was in school, blowing glass, like working at the glass shop.
Oh, you were working for. Okay.
So I mean, my life was insane. I had no social life at all. And but
you never went to the club.
the weather club,
The club. Yeah.
here and there, you know what I'm saying? But we at the end of the semester, I went into the painting department, and he's like, "Where the hell have you been?" You know. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm making all these monoprints," and he said, "You better bring them in, because you know we're doing critique." So at the end of the semester, I went in with like I had like 120 monoprints.
Oh shit!
And I was writing all over them and doing all this crazy stuff, and I started putting them up, and you know it was like a semester of advanced painting, and like the other students in the class had like 4 works. You know,
So overachiever. You're an overachiever.
no, but it was like
dare
not
you.
being in school and just being in the studio during that same period of time. I made so many like breakthroughs
Right.
that I realized like I was paying for school literally out of pocket. Like I would go in from work and cash my check and go to the office and give the ladies cash and they'd write me a receipt. And it was just, you know, and I just left. I just quit going.
Yeah.
And
Well, you saw the ocean, and you were like,
yeah, I was like,
"I'm out of here,
dude,
bitches."
right. Yeah. Yeah. And you know,
negative 20-degree winters.
yeah.
You're like, they have a place where the water isn't frozen, people. I've been there.
I mean,
I've
it's
seen
near
it.
frozen.
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of like the origin story was,
Yeah.
it's always been DIY.
Yeah.
And I grew up using painting as like painting is my life. It's like a religion for me. It's always been that. And having it exist in the context of like a structured environment or any kind of, it didn't really work the same kind of way. And I realized that I didn't, you know, at the time, like I felt like I didn't need this. I wanted to teach painting, but when I saw the politics at the university that I went to, I didn't want any part of that.
You know, it's kind of funny, just thinking about what you were saying, because you're saying that the structured part of the art school was kind of like a hindrance, right? Or like it's almost like you want to push against that kind of.
I think it just had to do with the program. I mean, if I was out
That
here
particular
at the
place?
time and I got to
Right.
go to some atelier, right?
Right.
I feel like, at least at that time in my life, that's what I wanted. And I was like, I was paying all this money.
Right.
And I didn't feel like I learned a single thing in college.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I swear, I feel like the art classes that I took, I didn't learn anything. All the things that I learned were on Saturdays, painting in the morning in my studio, or
for sure.
coming home from a party and painting.
Right.
You know,
I was just talking to this person on Instagram because she was like, "Oh, I'm going to go to art school." I'm like, "Just make sure that the art school you're going to is going to teach you something."
Yeah.
Because
Teach you what you
I hear
want
this
to
story
learn.
a lot where it's like, I went to art school and they were like, "Just paint whatever you want." And you're like, "No, fucking teach me something." like push me to like past where I'm at, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And you hear that a lot with art schools where they're kind of okay with you just go and explore, kids. It's like they're like taking you to a playground and then making you're off and playing and at the same time they're charging you a shit ton of money. And it's like, that's why I think I suggested like, oh, go check out like some ateliers, because you're going to get like this regiment, like you're going to learn how to fucking paint. When by the time you leave this place, you're going to know how to paint at the least.
You know, there's a double-edged sword there though, because at this point, I mean, going out and exploring is like, that's really what it's about. And I know people have come up to me and said, these are people who are great, really, very articulate painters. Mm-hmm. And you see those people and you hear from them, they're like, I wish I could loosen up. Mm-hmm. I wish I could, people trying to unlearn what they learned.
But see, to me, I think that that's just their nature. Because
possibly,
for me, I paint. Whenever I paint, I want to loosen up, but and in some ways I do. But I think I just I'm getting. The older I get, the more I'm like, it's in my nature to do this, and I'm not going to resist that.
Right. That's important. That's important.
And even but I think that's different from the artist being a free exploring and pursuing different avenues. I think that is in most artists' nature, just to kind of go down these rabbit holes and explore things. And I think an art school should really focus on honing the craftsmanship and the skill, and then the artist, if they are prone to exploring or whatever, they'll do it. If they're prone to loosening up their paintings, but even if you force them to paint tight, no matter what, they're going to end up loosening up.
Yeah.
Habit.
Yes, I agree.
But I really find it. I think it's sad when you hear about art schools not teaching them how to paint. You're like, I came out of art school and I didn't learn anything. It's like, oh God, because you gained so much debt from it, or it cost you a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, in my situation, I had started so early that I spent a long time trying to understand how to think like an artist.
Right.
So a lot of at least the beginning, undergrad art school is going to be teaching you how to sort of do that. But if you're already at the point where you are already obsessed with it, it's kind of like I said, if it was a different kind of program, who knows? I would have had a completely different experience.
Do you think your style would have changed much?
I don't know, man. I don't know if I believe in style. I think you just kind of paint the way you paint.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
But that's a
kind
style,
of what I
mean.
Yeah. What I mean is
oh, I used to paint really tight. I mean, my work has changed so much over it's actually really changing now.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I mean. I mean, I don't mean style, you got style or you don't know. I mean, the habits you build as an artist, I think, are just you kind of trying to figure out what you enjoy and what you're prone to do and what you're kind of drawn visually to execute. And I think that ends up being in parentheses your style,
maybe. I know that there were times where I would it would take me an incredibly long period of time to work out sometimes what maybe what was wrong with a painting.
Right.
Whereas somebody who had more tools, because some people learn really great tools in school towards that of understanding, if it's a compositional issue or if it's a color issue, or no one ever taught me how to mix color. I just figured it out.
Me too.
But I'm not sure if I do it right.
Me too.
I just do what I do, and it's like, maybe sometimes you could get somewhere faster if you had someone behind you kind of,
right.
But I would hate to be in an environment where it was like, you can only use a Rembrandt palette.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
But on my own, I went through sometimes I'm just decide to use a limited palette.
Yeah.
Because if you learn stuff, or maybe you're having a problem and a limited palette is going to it's going to maybe provide you with a boundary that's going to allow you to make, to come to some kind of understanding, in your work.
If you're putting limits on yourself for a reason rather than some arbitrary,
right.
somebody told you to do it now.
But that's part of like thinking like an artist. I mean, I believe, or I've come to believe that, being an artist is like being a scientist. It's very, very similar. And I think you have to approach it in that manner. Like you come up with a hypothesis. Like you said the other day, I think we just had a little interaction on Instagram where, you had a goal for a piece. You were trying to create a certain kind of thing. And I think we all, so there's you have this theory, and then you're testing it out in the studio.
Right.
And those people who take their work the furthest are actually recording, like you're saying, you got your notebooks. Like, it's amazing how, when I look at artists that I really think they're doing something, how methodically they record these things. It's a very scientific, serious process for people, and that's that obsession. That's the religion of it, where you're always in that headspace.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's not, and that's the thing, like you were talking about the ideas, the romance we have around the painter, where it's just like, oh yeah, this is wild and crazy. Like, well, yeah, that might be true, but it's a very in-depth, methodical process of what goes on behind this stuff.
Oh, for sure.
It's not just, I feel like painting. Like, there's a definite drive to understand.
And it's a tough pursuit to accomplish that the execution of a concept. So just getting good at the thought process doesn't necessarily pan out all the time, because you might have an idea that you think is really good, but your hands might not be skilled enough to execute.
So you can't manifest it in the way that you.
Yeah, and so there's this whole work ethic that I think artists have. At least artists that are, I think, really talented, where they work really hard just to build a skill while trying to execute a concept. And it's this weird thing where it's almost like a lost kind of, I don't know, art form or whatever, where your hands are forced to accomplish something, just because we live in this like technology world where you kind of get these, you get a cheat in that the computer gets to do certain things for you that doing by hand are just harder, like perspective, or whatever. Like in a computer, you kind of get to cheat in that turn, but an artist will have to force themselves to do all these things and learn all these things through their brain to hand or whatever. That is really hard, and it just goes back to the idea. Another idea we had for this podcast was to kind of explain that being an artist isn't like it's like another idea of like what artists are, these like people that just sit around and paint willy-nilly, and it's like, this is not easy. It's you put a ton of work in and a ton of effort to become an artist, and it's not as simple as you think it is. I don't know.
True debt. You said that there are certain artists that you see doing that, where they're really good at explaining their process, or at least showing their process, and that you see that in the work that they're doing. Can you think of any examples of people doing that you see off the top of your head? Like maybe see them on Instagram or something?
Oh yeah, actually, at some point last year, I discovered this artist's work through somebody else. Well, there's the three right off the top of my head. Joshua Hagler.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And Maya Resnick.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how I found this guy, but there's a guy in Australia named Adam Lee. And he was on Yosha's podcast.
Oh, okay.
And I listened to it, and I was like, this guy knows where it's at. And I saw his work, and it just blew me away. And he actually, in the podcast, he describes that he has a PhD in philosophy with an emphasis in painting. So his PhD involved like a 500-page dissertation, and then about 4 or 5 full shows of work. And so I emailed him and I said, "Hey, I want to read your dissertation." And he was like, "Seriously?" But he showed me where to find it in this repository, and I sat down with it and I read it.
Wow.
And he in there he brought up a lot of authors. But what was that I'm actually reading some of their books right now. I'm reading an amazing book right now called The Reenchantment of Art by Susie Grublick. I might have butchered the name, but like
no, you nailed it.
Yeah. It's close enough.
Susie, if you guys didn't catch it, her name is Susie Grublick.
That's how she pronounces it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's amazing. It's completely changing. It's informing my work right now. My work was looking for it and kind of going in that direction beforehand, but it's. Adam is somebody that I really believe approaches the work as an extension of the narrative becomes so much about the process. The process is developed in part by the narrative, and really the reason that I'm looking at these people or have been looking at these people is that was something that I'm wanting to develop in my work, is a narrative that's almost defined by the process. And having an underlying philosophy where that becomes, in a sense, more important than the way the pieces are executed.
Yeah.
But that the process informs the narrative, and the narrative informs the process. And that's where I'm headed. That's what I want to do. These are the things that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And I've done it. At times I've nailed it. But I continue to make paintings like obsessively, whether they sort of are going in that direction or not. Like,
right.
It's been a weird year.
So what do you mean by so as far as the process telling the story, or I don't know, I can't remember how you worded that.
I can give you an example actually. From
that's what I wanted to meet. What I wanted to ask.
Well, like I think somebody kind of goes into like asking questions about the actual paintings, but I think somebody asked like, why do you choose to paint the way that you do rather than having a more refined sort of. I can't remember exactly what it was, but
like
I read it.
Constructed approach. Why you go through that rather than like a sort of soft, more classical blended approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that goes into what I've been thinking about for years, and just about the history of, we used to make paintings because we didn't have cameras.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then we had cameras, and then we made paintings that didn't look like paintings anymore.
Right.
We made paintings that were like, you take a blank canvas and you throw a knife at it,
right?
And you just made some paintings, like so, and we had postmodernism, and we had all these things, and so for me, when I really break down what painting is, it's painting is a record of 1,000 moments and 1,000 decisions.
Yeah.
And that's what painters do, is you sit there and you think and you make a decision, and then you make another decision, and you make another decision. And we all have that feeling. Everybody that paints understands that the work takes over at a certain point. Like, you know, you begin with an idea, but like you were saying, Josh, like there's a point where you may not, your hands aren't really, it's not really your idea anymore because you're reacting. You're making decisions based upon what you did before, you know? So
I don't know if I said that, but if I did, I sound hella smart.
but like, you know, so that's what a painting, you know, people used to try to make paintings, or people still do. One way of making a painting is to try to capture a moment in time. Like the light that shone off.
Plein air paintings.
Yeah, plein air painting is like that. But I mean, do you make a plein air painting in like 2 seconds, or does it take you like a couple hours?
Right.
So what you did is you made a painting that was an amalgamation of a million minutes in there. You know what I mean? Like it was, but you made this, you tried to capture those things that were the most powerful elements, you know? A camera can't really do that.
Right. I mean,
you know, so mostly what I'm trying to do is make paintings that don't necessarily capture a moment in time, but they show a spectrum of possibility. So I like to look at paintings that are not done yet.
I do too.
And I remember always thinking like,
we've been talking about this.
It's the visibility of those decisions where I've always been really into like calligraphy. I like it when the decisions are visible.
Right.
Where, you know, you can take a little tiny brush and you can spend 1,000 hours and you can, you know, make this thing. And like, but I like it when the painting, the you know, the brush, the mark making, to me is really, that's why I paint, because it's primitive. But it's, you know, and you make this mark and then you have to deal with it. It's like a sword, and it's visible, it's direct, it's articulate, and it might be a bad decision, but it's there. And you know, I start to feel a little weird when I start to fiddle with a painting too much. Like when I start to get all.
See, this is one of those things where I don't disagree with you. I just have a different approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like
absolutely.
So
Totally.
for me, it's like I love to fiddle with my paintings.
Yeah,
that sounds dirty. But I also really enjoy unfinished paintings. But I also like when an unfinished painting has like a really focused and rendered point to it. It's almost like I get a peek of like what the finished product looked like and what it took to get there.
Yeah.
All in one shot, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But that's kind of like what we were, so the idea behind that informs the process of the work. You know?
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, like sort of the deconstruction, so-called, is a bit of a decision where you're letting those decisions be laid out for the viewer.
It's not deconstructing though in the way that like the Cubists deconstructed.
Right. No,
it's more like
you're not taking apart. It's more you're leaving it.
You're constructing many moments. It's like an amalgamation of many. Like if you look at that painting of Emily, there's a couple like she moved, and I just left both the hands.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because that is kind of a thing. Like, why are those hands in that position in that way?
And there's certain things like I like the idea that that our perception as humans, like our perception, our ability to record is limited.
Right.
And different for, you know, if like 10 people went to a dinner party and then you asked them the next day, like what to write down, like what they saw or what they noticed, you get 10 different parties.
Right.
And what I like in painting is being able to describe kind of the lack of perception or ability to record to me is as interesting as the ability to record.
Even if the person is viewing the thing from the same eye, you get a different story. For instance, if you go and you watch a movie, and then you go and you're talking, and you and your friends are talking to someone else, and you're like, and then it's happened a million times where someone will say like, and then he said, and then blah blah blah, and you're like, he didn't say that. He said this. And it's because even though you both are sitting next to each other and looking at the same exact thing, your memory is flawed in that it will just ingest whatever you perceived as whatever, and it'll track it as truth. And
yes,
and even if it's a
lie,
so
and that's what it comes down to, is that every painting is a lie anyway.
How dare you?
You know, I don't care how much of a realist you are, you can't paint a person and have a person walk out of it. It's just a painting.
Of course, yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it's that decision-making process that when I visibly see those decisions, that it makes the paintings really kind of protean, where they don't look done. They look like they might change. If you left the room and come back, that it might be a different painting later. Like, it looks like there's something that might happen.
And I think there's something great about an unfinished painting in that it kind of lets you finish the painting yourself. It's like when they end the movie at the wrong point.
Yes.
Or,
yeah.
You know, or not the wrong point, but at a certain, and then it's kind of like, it allows you to finish the movie in your own head. So you get to think.
I think that's really interesting, where the viewer becomes so much more involved in the narrative.
Right.
That is something that I find really interesting. Like, and just having a work that. So I mean, for years I wrestled with trying to understand, how can I make a painting that's finished and unfinished.
That's what
how can I gain that quality in the work? But it's like everything has to be kind of, well, we have that wonderful ability with oil paint where we can just like paint over and paint over and paint over. So every painting I make has like 5 paintings underneath, where I just leave the stuff I like and go back and revise. But it's not, it's this building process of decisions and building of decisions, and I think that's really beautiful.
The painting I'm working on now, it has this like real. I'm painting on wood panel, and I gessoed it with clear gesso, so you get to see this like really beautiful wood grain.
Yes,
and I think that, and I've got a good amount of comments where people are like, "Oh, the wood grain's like so great, like leave it as is." And I think that's kind of like where you're letting them finish the painting, and you're letting them know like there was never anything here. You get to like you get to like fix that part, you know, through your head, or you get to like complete the painting, or you get to imagine it. And I think that is the draw with an unfinished painting, is it lets them, it's interactive pretty much, which is it's definitely an amazing thing with art. I keep ending at it like a fucking dead end. Sorry. Like,
well, there was somebody who asked
crickets.
I think on Instagram, was like, when is a painting finished in your eyes? And it almost sounds like the answer, at least from what I would, if I were to like speak for you for whatever reason, if they were to ask, and it almost sounds like when you're done making decisions for it.
Right. But I think that's the problem, is with my tendency to get like stuck on a painting and work till it's complete. Like I want to start something and finish it, is I get stuck in that mindset where like it's not done till it's done. And I also really want to leave parts of my painting where they're loose and a little chaotic and a little whatever, and my mind is kind of getting in the way in that predicament where
it's really hard to do.
Yeah, there's that. I don't even remember what movie it is, but there's third movie reference by me. There's a movie where they're talking
Third
about
movie reference, no title yet.
yeah, no title, but it's about what they say something about like, oh, this person goes into like a kindergarten fucking art class, and they're like, wow, your students are really talented. Like, how do they do such great work? And then the teacher says the key is when I come in, and I'm butchering it, but it's something to do with knowing when to pull the painting away from the student, pretty much. And that's always kind of stuck with me, because I have that. I have to like be the teacher in my own painting and like pull it away from me. Like, you're done here, Josh. You know, it's like this mental battle I have to have with myself, just because I am prone to just finishing what I started. So I envy like the whole like whenever I see someone that's loose with their paintings, I really envy that. Hence, segue back to Jason. Crickets. Enter crickets here.
I saw Cecily Brown, the painter. She said at one point that she said, if I make a painting that is if there's no object, if it's just completely kind of non-representational, if it goes that way, then it just becomes paint. And it doesn't have a certain kind of humanity in it. But if a painting goes the other way and it becomes so much about the object that the paint disappears, it becomes not painting anymore.
I see what you mean.
And that's kind of I walk that line too, where if I start to get really obsessed in a work with this shoulder has to look just that way, or this needs to be that, you know, I will intentionally pull away from that rigidity, because I'm not trying to isolate like in that way.
Do you think that applies to the concept as well?
It does. It absolutely. I mean, that's what it's about. There's a disassociative kind of theme in my work. You know, people who feel out of sorts or are non-defined, or kind of when you come into altered states, ecstatic states or contemplative states, where you have a kind of disassociation with your body, or you know, I like the idea of psychedelia without the sort of trope of what people think of as psychedelic art.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the transformative experiences of coming into contact with things that you don't understand. You know, sort of body disassociation, things like, I'm really interested in that transformational kind of like quality. So to me, these things feel like an abstraction. They feel like there's only certain times where your body is important to you. But when you're not thinking about being in a body, like, where are you? And capturing this in, I believe that painting and the primitiveness of the mark making, there's a way to kind of capture that feeling. And that's what I search for to answer the question is, I don't care about as much of what I look for in the finishing of a painting is when I feel, this sounds really woo-woo, but like when the vibe is right, then I know it. Yeah. And there's all those millions of things that
by the way, that sounded woo-woo.
I know. I'm a little woo-woo. But like there's so many millions of things. That's crazy. I was just thinking about it the other day, but that we do that we naturally do, like generating eye movement, directing the viewer's eye in your paintings.
We as artists.
Compositional things, variations in line, variation. I mean, what we do is so complicated, but you get, you're looking at a painting that you're making, and you're doing all those things almost second nature.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, I've never been like classically trained at all, and the more I learn about like the classical techniques or whatever, the more I'm like, oh yeah, I do that already.
Yeah, you're like, I've been doing that for years.
Yeah, I just
didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, I didn't know the name of it or
right.
whatever. I just
right.
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes knowing those things helps you solve problems that you weren't able to solve before, because self-taught painting, it takes you forever to get to the next thing sometimes. Whereas someone with somebody walks into your studio who has they have like an MFA from Berkeley in painting or something, and they come in and they're just like, oh, this is what's going on in this work, and you're like, oh my god,
yeah,
I've been trying to describe that to myself for like a month and a half.
But it can go both ways. So at the same time, sometimes people that are like way more art school than I am, and then I'll look at the work and I'm like you don't have the technical skill that I have, but you have the knowledge. You just weren't obsessed like I was. Like I'm self-taught, so to get to the level that I'm at, I have to just be obsessed about it. I have to always be pursuing it. And sometimes I'll see like a person who was an art student and they just weren't obsessed about it, so they aren't that good. And you're like, you have all this knowledge, you just can't do what you want it to. And it's not necessarily it's not a thing as in like I want to be loose or anything. It's they want to be technically good, and I can see it, but they just aren't obsessed the way I am about certain things, and I think it's just we kind of all meet in the middle at the end of the day, which is I'll end up learning what you got taught, but I just learn it as an old fucking man, and you might be as skilled as I am technically. I mean, I'm fucking patting myself on the back too much here, but I'm trying to finish the analogy. But it's just the idea that you might be technically as good as I am, but it's just going to take you a little bit longer because you spent more time doing this, and I spent more time just my hand looking at something and executing it. It's I think it's this give and take thing. I gave something away to be self-taught, and then I'm slowly scooping up that knowledge that I never received.
I think we do what we have to do to achieve the result that we want. I mean, if you're going for a certain thing, there's work that's so incredible that relies absolutely in no way on any kind of technical ability,
right?
Of any kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there's work that very much revolves around a certain kind of technical execution.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like I was saying, like that scientific kind of, but it's really interesting to actually try to do something, not know how to do it.
Right.
And then to actually seek out the mastery of that, gaining the tools that you need. And I think one of the things that's great about art and in general is that there's as many ways to approach it as there are people who do it. And this is funny because I want to throw this one out to Serge, but like I was thinking the other day, and I've entered art competitions before, like long ago, but to me at this point in my life, the idea of an art competition, like a competition, seems so foreign to me.
Said the bronze medalist.
It's like you won at art today.
I know.
Here,
yeah.
you know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like,
I mean, it's with it's like with the Oscars. It's like it's an award show about fucking creating something. It's like, who gets to decide?
who gets to decide what's good or not? And I really don't. I think it's interesting how you know, I paint in a certain kind of way, but someone, you know, all the artists that I love, they paint so differently.
Yeah.
So differently, and I love all of them for different reasons, for you know what they do. And it, to me at this point, like, I think that painting is like, I have goals that are going to inform the work, like fearlessness and experimentation and you know, being courage.
Right.
These make good paintings, but
I mean, I wouldn't disagree with you just because I mean, I agree with you, but I also do think like that. I think, say, if you're a courageous person, that that will just speak through your art. Or I think if you're a timid person or whatever, I think that'll also speak to the art, and I enjoy that just as well.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think these qualities and characteristics are good and bad, but overall, I more enjoy like you being able to execute them. So, like, if you're a timid person, for instance, which I feel like a lot of artists out there are, shout out to timid people, that you can portray that through your art, where I can visually see it and understand that, and that'll make me enjoy your art, or whatever you're creating, just as much as the person who throws the fucking paints or whatever and is fearless and who doesn't give a fuck. Like, I appreciate that just as much, but that is a characteristic in your personality that someone might not be able to pull out, and I love them both.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about honesty, like making honest paintings. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I was saying, like, you're gonna paint how you're gonna paint.
Correct.
I mean, you might have this or that or whatever, but you know, if you that's an important thing. I think a lot of people get stuck, and they're blocked. They have because they're trying to make paintings that aren't like the kind of paintings that they're supposed to be making.
That's a good point.
You're trying to do something else, and you can't figure it out because if you're trying to make super bold paintings, but you're just not that kind of person,
right?
Yeah,
it's gonna kill you.
Yeah,
you know, you won't be able to do it. You'll beat yourself up all day. You know.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be. You know, you should be trying to paint what you're going to paint. That's the key, is to try to tap in to who you are and trying to explain this through your artwork.
That is the whole key. That's the
so
only
hard
thing that matters.
So
it's the only thing.
Yeah, so when I feel like I just got a pat on the back.
Yeah, dude.
No, I'm flustered. I'm blushing.
No, do you ever get emails from people like stuff like that, asking them like, how do you get people like, how do I get galleries?
Yeah.
How do I make a living as an artist?
Yeah, I try to be as brutally honest as possible.
I just say, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's what I say. I'm like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Or I usually say just paint always, or like something like that. You know, like just constantly paint, or just or I get a lot of times I get people that are like, oh, I wish I could paint more. I'm like, well, then just paint more. Like, instead of watching fucking Real Housewives of whatever, like, paint. You know, instead of doing whatever you're doing, paint. Like, if you really want to paint, then you'll paint. And I'm not here to convince you, like, or say there's like some mysterious like secret we all have. Like, every artist that is talented is spending a crazy amount of time painting, because that's what we we don't have to be convinced to paint. We're just like, that's what we do. Like, we're just being honest, and we're so addicted to this art that we're forced to paint, you know. And if I'm not so aggressive to the point where I'm like, so don't paint, you know, like maybe you should quit. But I'm usually like, you got to just find the time. Like, if you can't find the time, then I can't help you.
Yeah, I really think that the difference between a amateur and professional is really just a level of commitment.
Yeah.
That's a big.
Perfect.
That's always been a big. You know, it's that was something else that I've been thinking about this year. Was the art is always going to run into, when art meets capitalism, there's always going to be a problem.
No,
because at least what I've come to view the act of painting as is, it is like, it's a ceremony. It's a spiritual experience. It's so many things that once you try to mix it with capitalism, you're gonna have a problem. It becomes, it's always a problem. It's people. It gives everyone a hard time. It gives everyone that I know a hard time, because you got to deal with it. You got to deal with it in some kind of way, because it's taking something that is actually what I've come to believe as incredibly sacred and turning it into something else. And when you walk into the studio thinking about, now what can I paint that's going to help me pay the rent this month? You're going to have a problem.
You're going to get very stressed and you blow off steam, and then you start a podcast and do that.
No. I was gonna go the opposite round and say you're gonna paint like puppy dogs. And,
well, that too.
Because I've never thought that. Like, what's gonna sell? But I mean, I definitely,
you know, or if you're just, well, like I was listening to someone else's podcast.
How dare you? You don't listen to ours only?
They were talking to
2 episodes.
To Casey Gleghorn from Booth Gallery.
Okay.
And something he said really resonated with me about just being in this.
This was suggested donations
for the right reasons.
Was it?
I think so.
Just being in this for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And it always has to come down to that core of like, why do you make work? Why do you paint? Why do you make sculpture? Why do you do this? Like, why do you do it? And there's good reasons to do it. And then there's reasons that people do it that aren't good.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're in it for the right reasons, that's when you're going to go into, I mean, no matter what else revolves around this stuff, like we all know how good a good day in the studio is.
Yeah.
And how good it feels to, you know, like I was going to tie that thing into the origin story and I'll like throw it down now. Like I was sitting in my house over the weekend and I just had finished like a 13-hour stretch of like being at the wall in the studio.
Wow.
And I ate some popcorn in there at some point. Drank a bunch of coffee, you know.
Sure.
And I was looking at what I'd done, and it was pretty representational at the point that it's at right now. And I remember sitting down and thinking, like, you know, my 8-year-old self who was looking at those books and wondering how the hell people did that would be really excited to know that I can do that now.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And it was a moment, man.
Now who's patting?
I mean, it was a real moment. Where no, I was just like, you know, it was one of those moments where it was just like, you know,
his 8-year-old self was like,
was like, hey man, you did something with your life. And painting for me has always been, you know, when I was like, you know, when you're like 16 years old and you feel like everything around, you know, there have been moments in my life where everything around was just a river of shit. Everything was, but painting was always there. It was always there. And I remember a couple times just being around in a situation with people who were trying to figure out what their purpose in life was. And I feel like so grateful that I never had to feel that way.
I feel that that's like the one thing that I consistently noticed is like when people are like, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm like, God, like even though I work a full-time job, like, 40 hours a week, I just know like, but that's not who I am. Like,
You're a painter.
Like, yeah, they're like, I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, or I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing in college or whatever. And I've always been like, I have no idea how that feels. I've never been in that I've never been lost when it comes to that.
Because you always know that you can go back to that home space, and that's what you're here for. And it's
lucky.
That's what it's about. Like, and it's always been a consistent kind of thing. And I think that's the right reasons. It all kind of comes back to, well, okay, you get published in a magazine, and you're like, oh, that's cool, my work's in a magazine. But then you have a shitty day in the studio, and you don't really care that your work's in a magazine.
No,
because it's like either you're on the path of what you're trying to do, or you're not. And it's like it can be, all this other stuff revolves around the art world, or all the multitudes of variations of the art world that are around. But none of that stuff is going to make you really happy. The only thing that's really going to make you happy is constantly pushing your work forward. Because that's really what everybody lives for. And but if you start to get away from that, you turn into, then you're Jeff Koons. And Jeff Koons is a great artist. I mean, I understand why he does what he does.
Shots fired.
And it was beautiful.
No, it's distracted Jeff Koons. Come see us, 1200 block. Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going.
We'll fight. Yeah. Some guy wrote a video game. He wrote a video game program where it's like a first-person shooter that you shoot Jeff Koons' art. Really? And he built a box around it so it looked like an old video game.
Oh, okay.
A stand-up arcade game, and you could go, and he put it in an art show, so you could go in and you could like shoot. It was like Doom.
Yeah,
you could shoot Jeff Koons' work.
Wow.
So what happens when Jeff Koons plays that game? Is he like?
I don't know. It's like Koonsception.
Yeah. Exactly. That is gold. You could ball that fucking joke up and sell it.
We just found the intro to our podcast.
Yeah, and we just sold. That guy just sold 1 million arcades from this. Yeah, he's like emailing Jeff Koons right now. Jeff Koons, could you please play my game so we could fucking make $1 million bajillion?
I used to make fun of him, but I actually read an article that changed my mind about his work.
I actually don't know enough about him and his philosophy to really care either way about him. So he's just one of those people that's like, oh, he's in that part of the art world that I probably never see. So I'm like, I don't get butthurt about people like that. Like in that stratosphere of art, it doesn't even concern me really.
It feels weird to me because it's so far away from my experience of, when someone builds a factory and has a whole bunch of minions that kind of like do, but that's really what his work is about, is that.
My opinion on Jeff Koons' work is that I have none because I'm horrible with names.
Oh yes, this is a recurring theme.
I have no idea who he is, but I'm pretty sure I saw his work in
big shiny balloon animals.
Oh yeah,
and the Michael Jackson, the ivory
with
cast of the monkey, with all the gold and the
I know stuff. Yeah.
So I mean, his process is basically the way that he has built all of his people working for him, and everything is that's the art.
There is this weird.
He's kind of talking about what we've done with. The desire and the vapidity of like all of it,
It's the Andy Warhol model, pretty much.
It's the Warhol model, exactly.
That's the shittiest. That's the thing I really want to push against in art. I mean,
I love Andy. I love Andy Warhol.
No, not. I want to push against whatever. But I just want to. It's to me the magic about art is you and whatever you're creating, and and from start to finish, and you see it through, and then there's this like dopamine fix that you get if you accomplish it, and it's just something in my head that's magical. And when you start hearing about these like Andy Warhol model art careers, then to me, God, I don't even know if they understand like the feeling I get. Like, and that's like the reason. That's like the only reason I do art. So I don't even understand why they do art. So then it has to be a financial gain, in my opinion. I mean, I might be wrong, but
I think it's just a different way of completing that idea.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you make a movie,
right.
Or it takes 100,000 people to make a movie,
Right, or architecture or something. Like
yeah.
I do.
It's just another way it's a different process,
right?
Yeah.
To come up with a different. Do you know David Byrne from Talking Heads?
I know him. I mean, I know who he is.
Yeah,
I don't know a lot about him.
He said something.
Oh
once.
yeah, I know him.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm just kidding.
me and David are tight. Like
It's because you don't know names.
he said
I know
at one
Talking
point
Heads.
that
Can't forget that.
if we stop thinking about art as objects
Mm-hmm.
and approach it more as a platform for an experience, it solves a lot of these problems where, you know, you bring, you know, the viewer, you know, a painting, why is one painting worth like so much money and some other painting isn't? It's like, well, what makes a painting important? Well, it may not be the technique with which it's painted. It may not necessarily even be the idea that's behind it, but it might be the reaction that it causes in people. That's what it's there for. Like, you know, there may be a painter who's incredibly technically facile. Is that how you say that? Like, they're, you know,
Sure.
and that may inspire a certain experience in people who will, you know, consider it valuable. Then there be another painting where it's an idea that was executed, and it may not have the same kind of technical proficiency because that may not be important to the idea.
Right.
But it can still cause an incredibly powerful experience in the people that view it.
But you see, that's where the value comes in. So, like, the question being, how come that painting is so valuable is such a muddled question.
Well, I mean, valuable as far as like what people would, you know, paper, money, valuable,
right?
Which is
And
absolutely no description of value at all.
Yeah. That's kind of just the little tag mark or whatever I want to put into the whole value conversation. Just because it's such a weird world.
Exactly.
To, like, valuable paintings and the reasoning they're valuable.
I mean, valuable in the greater sense of the word.
Right. That's why I wanted to cut in at the point where you said the person experiencing the painting is, you know, is so moved or whatever by what a person, or
I should say what makes it a powerful work, a really powerful work, not valuable in like dollars, but powerful as in it deserves to be seen.
Right.
It's something that you want to see, you know, or that should be kept.
Yeah.
Which is why I think art is important in the first place.
But this goes back to the initial conversation of a group of people creating an art, and I think I really do think it's powerful or valuable or whatever you want to say when a single person has created this single idea, or, you know, whatever they created. I think there's something great about that. You know, it's like
there is.
When you go and you see a painting created by one of the greats, there's something special about seeing that and being in the presence and knowing that he was in front of this and he created that. And I do think that is lost when you have a group of people creating for you. I know the old masters and all that, they kind of worked in, like the Renaissance era, they kind of worked in that whole model as well. So I guess the Warhol model was kind of like the Da Vinci model or whatever. But he did at the end of the day put like the detailed touches usually to it, you know. I believe. I might be fucking wrong with that. I was never taught. Sorry, guys. But I believe that he would like come in at the very end and like put like the really like crisp touch to things, and that sort of thing. And I think there is, and they kind of had a different reasoning for that. They were kind of like they had more of like a mentor sort of system rather than the Warhol system was like
do a bunch of heroin and just see what happens.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
and I mean where I'm coming from. The reason why I paint is to have that interaction with this, to have that, to experience that creative process.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? Because you, for artists, there is this really emotional thing we deal with when we're painting, and it's with a fucking piece of canvas or a board or a piece of stone or whatever, and it's kind of like what we spend most of our time in life doing.
But then you got to deal with yourself too.
Yeah, but it's like what I mean is if this is a rom-com, another movie parable. This is a rom-com. We're going to chase the painting down in the airport and tell her we love her. I mean, it's like this relationship you have with this. Let's pretend the art is this other person, but kind of a mirror of yourself, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like this weird thing where we probably spend a large amount of our time with a painting or paintings, and we have these emotional highs and lows and this weird thing, and at the end of the day it's a fucking piece of cloth or a piece of wood. God, this is getting depressing. Whatever, do art, kids. Super cool.
It's been a very fascinating discussion.
I mean, I think powerful paintings become some. I'm gonna get woo again, but I actually think that paintings become really powerful, magical objects. I mean, yeah, it might start as some pretty banal materials. That's one of the reasons why I love painting. Is it is almost the most
you just
banal
brought me back. You just
materials.
brought me back in like a second.
But at the end of it, there's this. You know how like you hear people say it a lot where they work on something for like 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and they've been painting for a long time. So you can do a lot in 10 minutes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But and people will say like, well, it's just good like that. But you have this feeling like, but I haven't built up enough energy into this yet. Like it's just, and it's not about, I just feel like I need to work harder on it or something. It's that you're actually building energy into the work.
And this goes back.
And then that shows in the work. That my favorite abstract painter right now is this guy named Rob Zott.
How do you spell it? Do you know?
Is he Indian? That sounds like an Indian last name.
He's
ZAHDT. Is that it?
Oh my gosh, it's ZO. I can't remember now. I think it's ZOTD.
Okay. Close enough. I'm sure.
Yeah, and he makes completely abstract, non objective work. Mm-hmm. But his paintings are incredible. They're I think he's like the greatest abstract painter around. He's just nice. But he definitely paints in a very like it's evocative of a certain sort of element in painting, a certain era, like, and in a way. But he was sort of saying that the stuff that you're thinking about while you're painting, whether or not it ends up in the painting, it ends up in the painting. Like, you might be thinking about, I don't know, whatever, you might be thinking about politics. You may not be painting about politics, but that ends up in the work.
Yeah.
In some kind of way,
Yeah, that's why when you look at paintings of like different time eras, there's like this feeling in the air almost, where all these painters, no matter what they're painting, they kind of all have this like spiderweb connection.
Yes.
And I think it is that. It's the politics of it. It's the everything in the air kind of that adds to the artwork. But then I do think that there is this.
I just mean on a personal level.
Yeah.
I mean, your energy, like you were saying,
But it's like one
your
of those,
energy ends up in there.
But it's one of those things where like humans are kind of all just like, it's like that 6 degrees of separation, or we're all connected, or whatever woo-woo quote you want to use.
See, I'm going to get you to cross over by the end of the podcast.
Not doing it. But yeah, I also
Get him more
agree.
drunk. You'll get him there.
I think a big part of the magic beyond a painting too is like the like I was saying earlier, when you stand in front of like a master and in his painting, it's like being in his presence almost, like that. It's like the painting kind of has a little bit of him, almost like when you were talking about the mark making, where you're like leaving yourself on there because you're capturing a moment of you making emotion, and so there's this magic of when you stand in front of a painting and you can see brush strokes and stuff like that, like that you're standing where almost not necessarily where he was standing, but you kind of are. And it almost goes back to the cave paintings, and the great cave paintings where they have like that leopard and all that. And one of the magical things about it is that there was this fucking guy living in a cave, and not cage, in a cave, and it instantly brings you back to like, who the fuck was this guy, and like, why the fuck was he painting? Because he had leopards to worry about.
Yeah, but that was magic.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's I think I'm super into that right now.
That's what's up.
Like that. The reason that we made images, the reason we stacked rocks, the reason that because it was. I was thinking today, what's funny is having like Instagram and you see everybody's stories of them making work or whatever. And I realized that all around the world, whether you're in Colombia or
Tonga,
Venezuela, or
I thought Tonga doesn't exist.
Magical
China,
magical place.
The painting area. All around the world, we all have the same altar. We have our runway.
Yeah.
We have our runway. We have our. You look at the way we light this stuff. It looks just like church. It looks just like an altar, and there's that connection of,
But I got my first easel like last year, I think.
I paint on the wall still. I got an easel, but I just paint on the wall. I do that old New York school style. I just nail that thing to the wall.
Yeah.
I stand over here and walk back and forth about 8 billion times.
Because
I've been walking back and forth on the same rug for like 17 years. Same rug. It's like worn out in the middle.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
One of these days I'm gonna hang it.
you need a sponsorship.
As a painting.
Yeah. Speaking of
like,
recording experiences, you got like 7 years worth. Right
I got
there.
7 years worth of me walking back and forth across the No, now at this point it's many, many, many years.
Those are your brush strokes.
They are.
Where you're getting super woo-woo with this.
It's like every painting, man. I'm trying to be more woo. I'm trying to get so woo this year. Like, I'm really into it.
Trying to get woo woo woo.
I'm prone to be the opposite. I'm like, my issue is that I grew up with like a super religious dad, and like my natural response to anything woo-woo is just like, nope. Like I have to like read.
Wait, you mean like religious, like white European patriarchal religion?
No, he was Buddhist. I'm just kidding. yeah, that one.
Yeah, fuck that shit. I'm talking about like wake up in the morning and realize like how magical the complexity of existence is, and how, I mean, painting is a great metaphor for pretty much everything. But like everything that we do, we are walking with all those people who painted behind us.
Yeah,
we're building on this conversation that's been going on. And I mean, when you get in trouble, what do? You go on a Google Art project and you look up Velasquez and you're like, what did Velasquez do? Like you're talking to Velasquez.
Should I be doing that?
You should
what
be.
What do you do on Google Art project?
But like you know.
Selfies?
What?
You take selfies
on
instead?
What?
On Google Art project.
I just learned about that. MJ, I just downloaded it yesterday to show my coworker.
Oh.
I've never. Is that a long running thing? I didn't.
No, I think it's just came
Google
out
Art.
a little while ago. Yeah,
it's been around for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But like that
really?
Selfie thing, that's kind of.
Oh, I don't even know what
now.
that's. Oh, that thing.
Yeah.
That thing.
One of them.
I want to throw this out there. Remember the autumn of everybody animating their painting faces.
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that?
yes,
I remember. I told you when it happened that I was going to bring it up years later.
I've never done it.
It was ridiculous.
I didn't do it either.
And it was total.
It was
like,
too cool.
Too creepy.
It completely broke like your stuff. Like it was complete spam. Everybody did it.
Yeah.
I was too cool to do it. I was like,
Good for you.
You resisted it. It was creepy.
It was. Yeah. I'm wondering if anyone fell in love with one of their, like, she's alive. She's alive. Yeah, I don't know. But I think we're kind of coming to an end. I don't know how long we ran this thing, but
An hour and 45 minutes.
boom, we fucking nailed it.
Did I not do something I was supposed to do, or answer somebody's
Yeah,
question?
you didn't
we
do-
kind of roundabout.
First of all, you didn't do
people's
what you were
questions.
supposed to do.
Yeah.
You never answered what you were supposed to answer,
Yeah,
and you failed.
failed completely.
Yeah.
You don't
is-
win podcast today.
Yeah, in the competition. Yeah, but I guess thank you, Jason, for joining us on this. Thank you, Jason, for joining us on this
Get your NPR on.
midnight, on this late night in winter. We have vastly enjoyed your company, and we can't wait to hear from you again.
Thanks for inviting me over.
And to everyone listening, fuck off.
Oh, man. All right. Hey, guys. Wasn't that an awesome conversation? I liked it a lot. I was glad that I was just to be a fly on the wall there for it, because I didn't have a whole lot to say to interrupt that flow. But anyways, we just kind of forgot to promote Jason at all at the very end. We just sort of panicked and finished the conversation, just hit the off button on a recorder. So yeah, let me do Jason a favor here and tell you how to follow him on Instagram. And it's Jesus Christ, it's JAS_AV3RY. You got that? Hey Jason, I know you got a lot of followers, but all you have to do is make it a little more simple and imagine how many more followers you'll have. Anyways, yeah, also on Facebook, I know I said that I would get into that whole competition controversy that I stirred there. But yeah, that conversation was so good, I didn't want to interrupt it with anything and totally derail it. So next week we'll get into that, and it'll be awesome because Josh is never on Facebook, so he had no idea
what even happened with it. So it'll be pretty fun. All right. See you guys.